To be a real entrepreneur, you need to have what I call stubborn optimism, okay?
Tell me what that means.
And so what I mean by that is you need to see reality and then you need to just ignore it, because entrepreneurs don't see what is and say, hey, that's just the universe and that's the way it is. Entrepreneurs see what is and say, hey, I can change this. I can make it better. And that's what makes a real entrepreneur. If you're too busy with worrying about what is, you're never going to create something amazing. If you really want to change the world, look to the entrepreneurs, right? Government agencies and other groups like that, they move slowly and generally they're guided by public opinion. So it's difficult to make change happen. Okay, there is a disconnect between entrepreneurs and startups and the people who are funding. Okay, banks, they're not as free flowing with the cash as they used to be for a variety of reasons, and we all know those. Angels and VCs have become more and more cautious over time, though I expect crowdfunding might change that. And that's something that we're working on with First Funder, to approach VCs and angels and say, hey guys, don't forget that it takes a very small investment out of whatever fund you have. It takes a very small investment to fund a handful of startups in your community. And sure, they might not all make it, but chances are, if you do it long enough, some of them will. Right now, as it stands, the crowdfunding industry has really started started primarily with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and the crowdfunding industry has built around those models, and understandably so. It's a working model, but as it starts to expand and as more and more people become aware of crowdfunding, there are some issues that are starting to pop up, and we're starting to hear about those. How do I know they can execute? Startups generally don't have a great success rate, right? So a big part of knowing how to invest in startups is knowing whether or not they can make the idea work. Now, what First Funder does is that we're the first partner-based crowdfunding site ever. And what we do is we partner with various types of organizations. So for example, incubators, accelerators, university entrepreneurship programs, and national entrepreneurship programs, and also community-based programs. We take a very holistic view when it comes to crowdfunding and community building, because the ultimate goal is to build communities, not just companies. And when everything is said and done, if you come to First Funder, you're most likely coming through one of our partners. You're going to land on their page. What we do is we partner with these organizations, and we give each one of them a branded portal on First Funder. So whoever the partner is, they'll have their own page, and you can come to First Funder and you'll actually land on that page. And on that page they can feature themselves. They'll eventually, in the not too distant future, be able to fund themselves, and they'll be able to post all of their portfolio companies, or however they refer to them, on our page for funding. And we work with them to market in their community so that they can bring their community of funders to the table. That means the people who come to the table to look at these projects, they're part of the community. They have a vested interest just by virtue of the fact that they're there in seeing these businesses get funded and succeed. And that's very meaningful because it's not, when you fund a project, you're not just giving someone money. A lot of things happen along with that. First of all, you just gave someone money. Now you're interested in them succeeding. So what happens is you become an evangelist, right? And if they do succeed, well, you're the coolest person ever because you discovered the band before they got big, right? On top of that, you supported your community, and these days it's something that that we all like to talk about doing, but it's sometimes difficult to figure out how to do that. And, you may not want to go to a planning meeting, but you could certainly invest as little as, say, $25 in a company that's coming out of your community, and that's meaningful. I was recently out in California, and if you can believe it, not one person I spoke to had ever even heard of Kickstarter. We live in such a bubble here in Boulder where everybody is tech oriented, everybody has at least one startup, right? It's easy to forget that outside of our little bubble here, there are other people who maybe don't live their lives around things like crowdfunding. Here's the beauty of what we're doing. We're actually starting in communities across the country right now. And what's really great is you may come through your own community, and it may be the case that nothing in your community is exciting to you. Everyone invests or funds based on whatever their emotional or other triggers may be. So now the help doesn't have to come from your next door neighbor. It could come from someone across the town, across the state, across the country, or even across the ocean. All of that is great, but it's not necessarily great for starting businesses. And that's why in April of this year, President Obama signed into law the Jobs Act, which was a bipartisan effort to jumpstart our small businesses. Part of the Jobs Act allows for crowdfunding in exchange for equity, and that's a game changer. Companies which may not fit into the donation model, they may not have a good way to fund. Maybe they need more money than websites like Kickstarter generally produce for their projects. What this means is you can really get startup dollars. You can get up to $1 million in startup capital in exchange for equity through the Jobs Act. When it comes to crowdfunding, whether it be donation or equity, and First Funder supports both, they want to know that their dollars are going someplace where they're going to be used in a good way. If you don't have access to friends and family money, First Funder is great because it gives you access to people around the world who might be inspired by your project and want to help fund it. In addition to being crowdfunded, you're also kind of crowd vetted. And for angels and for VCs and for other institutional type investors, this is going to be a very powerful tool for them. Whether or not they realize it yet, what crowdfunding is going to do is to deliver them healthier companies that have some exposure, companies that have some evangelists, companies that have gotten some additional funding and support from a community that cares about them. Because it's one thing to buy a widget from a startup company, it's another thing to get a widget because you supported them. And that difference is very, very meaningful. So ultimately, crowdfunding is really going to help these startups in a variety of ways that go far beyond just giving them money. I think crowdfunding really can mean the democratization of startups. It's because they're all out there in the same way without bias. Each one has an equal chance of being funded. Your product, at First Funder, we don't feature campaigns based on how well they're funding, how well connected they are. Every single campaign on First Funder has an equal shot at being featured on the front page and showing up in anyone's search. So on First Funder, every single campaign has an equal shot.
But doesn't Chris have a better?
There's another way that crowdfunding really does help, even if you do have rich friends and family, and it's this. Let's say you do have a rich aunt or a rich uncle, and you go up and you say, "Hey, rich aunt or uncle, I'm starting a business, and I would love it if instead of spending $50,000 on beer, if you would give that to me so that I can start my business. And rich aunt or uncle says, sure, here's $50,000. And they write you a check, and you go and you put that check in your bank account. That's great. You have $50,000, but no one knows. If you instead said, hey, rich aunt or uncle, I would love it if you would give me $50,000, but please go and do it through First Funder. Now, everybody knows that you have $50,000, and it doesn't matter who it comes from. Ultimately, that's some serious market validation right there. Crowdfunding really solves the chicken or egg problem that a lot of startups face, where they need money to start their business, but they can't get money until they've started their business. And crowdfunding comes in and solves that problem for them. First Funder, we care about communities as a whole, and we're interested in helping not just startups but other community organizations as well, because there are a lot of things that make a community strong, and we would like to make sure that all of those things can grow together, and we'd kind of like to be a one-stop shop for community building. And since that's how since we're partner based, and since you can go to our website and see what's going on in your community, that makes it a great place to come in and say, hey, this is, I can fund businesses, and I can also fund other community projects, because at the end of the day, every dollar that goes in to drive innovation, to make our community better, is going to lift up the whole community. Your whole world is going to become very, very focused on what it is that you're doing, and depending on where you are in the entrepreneur chain, whether you're the CEO or whether you're CFO or whether you're on the tech side, you're going to find that you have a very, very different focus. From my point of view, if you're the CEO, what you really need to do is always keep a very, very high level view of what's going on, because it's not just your job to go out and get funding, it's not just your job to go out and have lunches, and it's not just your job to inspire and keep the focus within the company. Those are all great things. But really, your job is to look at the market and see what could be. And that's something that separates CEOs from pretty much everyone else in the world. I would say what makes a great CEO for a tech company is someone who's not necessarily a tech guy. I'm an analog guy in a digital world. I still like things that I can hold in my hand and touch and feel. And the value to having someone like that in a tech company is that in many ways that person becomes your liaison to the rest of the world.
Anti-group thinker.
What I'm saying is that you come in with just a very different view, and that view can be really important, especially when you're a startup, because a startup may be 1 or 2 people, maybe 3, 4, 5 people, and you spend so much time involved in your own world that it's good to have at least one of those people be looking outside your world. My name is Jonathan Benenson. I believe that crowdfunding can change the world, and that's why I'm the CEO of First Funder.